episode 320 of Global from Asia. Finally got a microphone. And we're talking about people management. A little bit of spice with some Asia culture and some storytelling. So let's tune in today.
Welcome to the Global from Asia podcast, where the daunting process of running an international business is broken down into straight up actionable advice. And now, your host, Michael Michelini.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much for choosing to download and listen to Global from Asia or stream or whatever. I mean, this does go into audio-only format, but this week's show is audio-only. We do try to get this on YouTube and other channels as well, and it's in WeChat. It's all over the place. At least we try to get it everywhere. Sometimes it gets banned or deleted or violations for whatever reason, but we get it as many places as we can. And you might notice maybe my sound is a little bit different. I'm back on this microphone. I finally sucked it up, or my wife finally let me buy a new microphone. I got a couple sitting in Manila still. I got the Air's apartment. Still recovering from this COVID nightmare that we're all, I guess it's not over for anyways, but getting a new microphone costs more in China. Can you believe that? Things cost more here than in the US, and they're made here, at least for now. All right, this week's show, we got Thomas Pun. You know, he's a really good guy. I've met him in a startup community in Hong Kong for like 8 years now, and he's been on my list for a while to get on, and we finally make it happen. And it's been really cool to hear about people management. So it's globalfromasia.com/people-management. And he actually kind of almost coaches me a little bit. I mean, it's kind of one of the benefits of doing these shows. I get to pick topics and talk to really smart people. And I started reading a book. I can't say I finished it, but he recommended a book, and I've been starting to read it. And you know, if you guys like the blah, blah, blah session after the interview, I don't want to take up too much this intro. I want to get right to Thomas. But I will share some of my own reflections of, you know, what I've learned with management of teams. I'll be honest, I've never managed a team in the U.S., in the West. I've only managed teams in China, Philippines, and Asia. So maybe that's also a difference. So we kind of talk about it in the interview, and I'll talk about that after if you're interested. And Thomas is a really smart guy, and he's been in the Valley, he's been in Hong Kong, he's got really good insights and recommendations. So get your notebooks ready. Let's dive into the interview. Thomas Pun. Thank you, GFA VIP members. I know you're listening because you give me feedback, and it's really cool. And we just had an amazing Lazada workshop last week, and we're doing these live workshops. Actually, some of the members don't want to come on the podcast to share about their business because maybe they don't feel like they're ready, or they don't want to be so public about it, but they don't mind to share to the members, and that's what it's really about. That's the big difference of if you're being a paid GFA VIP versus an awesome listener or a supporter of the show. You know, you are paying, which is very much appreciated, and you're also engaging with me and others in the community. We have private calls, forums, and we keep giving more and more benefits to those people in that circle. GFAVIP.com. Thank you. Okay, thank you everybody for tuning in to our Global from Asia podcast. We're in for a treat. We have with us Thomas Pun. He's a serial entrepreneur, I would say. You know, I met him. We met at the startup community many years ago in Hong Kong, and we've both been through a lot and of different, experiences. And thank you so much for coming on the show, Thomas. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, Mike.
Yeah. So, I remember, I think I had met you when you had come back from San Francisco to Hong Kong. I don't know when that was. Maybe 8 years ago or so, I think. But it's been quite a long time since we've been chatting in the community. Do you want to give us a brief introduction of yourself for the listeners?
Sure. So I'm trained as an engineer. I served my time in the Valley, and I moved back around the Pacific. So I've been in the Valley a couple of times. I've come back to Hong Kong, kind of back and forth, and every time I kind of feel like it's done. Like, I'm not going to move, but never say never. But it seems like now I'm like settled here. I've been in Hong Kong for last 8 years now, almost.
Yeah, I think.
I've been working with startups. I love working with passionate founders. I love pay it forward. I also kind of try to start something myself right now. So I'm exploring different ideas.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I know. So I'm really happy to have you on the show, and there's so much. You have so much experience, so much we could talk about. But I thought a good topic would be finding the right people for your team. Is I think what the title of the show will be. Sometimes I don't see until after the interview is finished, but it's about people, right? Whether it's a business partner, co-founder, or whether it's especially early employees, but even no matter what, the people. I think the team is the most important thing, right? That is what. Of course, everybody talks about technology or they talk about customers, but for me, I've been really focusing on team. I don't know what you would say about that.
That I really think team is is the fundamental of how you're gonna build your business. Because a lot of things you can't really do it yourself, right? So you're definitely gonna need help, and you're gonna need to work with people. There's a saying about product market fit. If you find something that the market really wants, I always think that without a team, you cannot even get the product out. So you really need to have that team right. And team building and so-called hiring and working with people is not natural, and usually you don't. It was never really formally taught. A lot of people kind of learn it by making mistakes, and some of these mistakes will be pretty costly. So I definitely think team building is a good skill to have.
Agreed, agreed. And I think it really is at the top. I mean, I've listened to a lot of these, you know, I don't, some YouTube videos and some other, speeches I've seen in sessions. I think no matter what, you're always going to be fine. I think as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, your job, I think, is always about people. And, one of the acronyms I like to use for CEO is, of course, it means Chief Executive Officer, but I learned this somewhere: customer, employee, and owner or shareholder. I think, the executives, the partners, they represent the people, and they build a culture, and they attract the people, whether it's a customer or an employee or a investor. So, it's definitely the skill. I guess it's also, I think a lot of times it relies a lot on the CEO role rather than maybe the tech partner or the more engineer type person. I think the skill is usually reliant on the main president, CEO. Is that something you would say, or?
Yeah, I think everyone on the team, they probably serve a good purpose, right? And how to get all this presumably good, smart, talented people to do things that at the time could look illogical, right? And it takes a lot of leadership. And leadership is also a very important factor on how you build team, right? How you lead the team, how you set the culture. So I think that's all related. The leader doesn't always have to be CEO, I think. I think CEO may, pick up certain very important aspects of running a business. And there are other people that you may want to hire that have, say, stronger leadership, right? That help the CEO to kind of push things forward as well.
Okay, awesome. And I think the other dynamic with, with our audience and our community and is the whole cross-culture, cross-border. I think, I don't know. I mean, you've spent time in the Valley. I've just visited briefly there, but I think one of the challenges I would say in Asia is all these I mean, maybe it's a strength, but I think it's also a challenge is so many cultures, and so it makes it a much more, I don't know, I would say delicate. Like, I've definitely adapted over the years by being in Asia. Like, I have to be more, I guess I should be in the US too, but I feel like in the US, you don't have to be as sensitive about like culture, or even maybe, I hope I'm not offended. I'm an American, so I think it's okay to say, but that's where Americans are, these aggressive, direct people. And we when I'm in the US and I do it in the US, I don't have to like be sensitive but when I'm in mainland China, when I'm in Asia, I have to feel like I have to be more cautious. I feel, at least personally, but I don't know how you feel about that, but I feel like cross culture especially in Asia, it's just more of an art. I feel, I don't know. I'd love feedback there.
uh, Hiring in general, I think hiring great talent specifically is always hard, no matter where you are. I do think each region, Asia, North America, Europe, they all have different challenges. Culture being one, like you said, how you actually, perceive as normal or, professional be different in different regions. But I think in general, it also depends on the vertical. If it's a tech, if it's a business driven, sales driven, really depends on the talent that you're looking for. But I think the fundamentals are the same. If you want to hire well, you really need to be systematic. You really need to be thoughtful about your process. And I think different regions, they will have different talents that are more abundant. There's different, for example, I think Valley, of course, Silicon Valley per se, there are a lot of tech talent, there are product talent, design talent. But at the same time, if you think that it's easier to hire because these people are better, right? They have done things more significant things, right? They ship things that you may have heard of. But at the same time, there are also more competition, right? They're all, big company there. So, it's always a balance, right? You have really strong, good talent or company that hire this talent, that attract this talent. But at the same time, you also have more competition, right? And in Hong Kong, for example, I think tech is definitely not as great. I think tech, the junior and the mid-level, they're abundant. Not abundant, but there are a lot of great, people there at that level. But for really senior people, you don't necessarily get those. But for Hong Kong, for example, they probably have very strong, a lot of strong profiles of sales, of, BD type of work, getting things off the ground, hustler type of thing. So I think different regions, they have strengths and weaknesses for sure.
Yeah, so I liked that. I took a note vertical. I didn't really ever take that into account. And for me, I don't even know if you knew, but I spent almost 5 years on Wall Street. I worked on the internal desk trading floor at Deutsche Bank on Wall Street. It wasn't on the actual New York Stock Exchange, but I was on a couple buildings over in the bank's own internal floor. And I was like the least aggressive person. You know what I mean? And
Right.
I was getting like, it was rough. They told me it's changed now with the whole that was before the financial crisis and everything, but it was rough, so I guess that's true. Because when I came out to Asia, it was almost like there was a little bit of buffer between that, but I was shocked because I had to be so sensitive. If I'd say something to somebody I hired or I work with or a partner or a factory, like they would be very offended. They were very sensitive, I feel, and I guess and I was like, man, I am like the least like aggressive person in my environment before, and now I'm like the most aggressive person in my environment. And I don't even think I had to keep toning down, and I'm still working. Even now, I still work on that because I feel like in Asia, like if I say, a lot of our team now is in the Philippines, or I've had people in mainland China and in Hong Kong and other places, but my style is, I think the American style is like direct, like this is a mistake, fix it. I don't really say I don't want to say it's your fault. I'm not trying to say it's your fault, but this is a mistake and most likely it was you. I don't really care, but can you fix it? But I remember in China, I would go to somebody's desk and I said, this is not working. Like this website, we did a lot of website stuff. So they were somewhat technical, fresh grads, technical people. So I guess that's another point. Like you said, they were mostly technical, but they would first deny everything. No, it's not my fault. I didn't do that. I'm like, that's not really the primary purpose of me saying that this is broken. I just want it fixed, but I'm not going to, but then you also can't say it in front of their other staff. You can't lose face in China, right? Like you can't go to somebody's desk and say this is a mistake because they're going to deny it because it's in the culture of the culture is like deny. I don't know. I don't want to offend anyone. I feel like that's like that's like what I've learned is deny.
Yeah.
So you got to call them into a room and you got to like kind of indirectly say, this is not working. What can we do? And then don't even, I feel like I've been gotten so indirect in my work in China or Asia. I can't be direct because if I'm direct, it's like offensive or, or they're going to close up or defensive or deny. So I've gotten really kind of grown the skill to be indirectly,
Wow.
like it's like around the object, not directly at the issue. It's like I'm going. I think that's the way it is too. You're like going around an issue, like you're circling it rather than directly going at the issue, which is an art I'm still learning. But just
Wow.
wanted to clarify that. But it's true about the vertical. I never thought of that because I kind of did go from Wall Street to tech in a way, or a little bit sourcing in tech and e-commerce. So that's an interesting point.
Yeah, I can definitely feel your pain. And I think what you brought up a really good point about, the working environment and so-called culture of either certain industry or certain company. And they attract different people, right? And certain people will do better, like they'll stick around more because they kind of fit what is needed in that environment.
Yeah.
And at the same time, your experience about you feeling there's a lot of friction giving feedback, that people are not very receptive. And I think it doesn't always just happen in like China or Philippines. I think it really, a lot of times it kind of comes down to how that person was brought up. How were they open-minded? Were they in an environment where they can take mistakes, right? Maybe their whole life they can make mistakes. It's almost like if I make mistakes, I'm gonna fail my parents, right?
Exactly.
So these people become very defensive, right? And I think having the open mind, which is I think it's very hard to actually strike a balance. Right? I think this is something that if you're lucky, you're able to work with someone, especially like say you were able to see this in action from the superior or from the peer, right? How they, look at this in a more objective way, think about, yeah, maybe there's something in there. How about we work together and, we solve it, right? Rather than just denial in the first, first shot. It's tough. I have a book that I'll recommend to you. About managing. It's called Radical Candor. I'll send the link to you later.
Okay, yeah, we can add it to the show notes. Yeah, but I mean, it was really, I don't know, it was really rough for me it's still rough, honestly, but I mean, when I first came into Asia market, China market, Philippines, and I just really learned to not be too aggressive, like not to be too direct, and I still do it to this day. I have to hold back. I'm upset, or a mistake was made. In the U.S., you're just very open about your emotion. You're just very open. You're just direct and open.
Right.
And I feel like here that's what I think I really would say. That's one of the main reasons, in my opinion, why Westerners fail in China or Asia is because they come in and they're very aggressive, they're direct.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. I'm kind of on a tangent here, but I do think I've really adapted to that and my last point to this point is even my like assistant, like Jojo, she told me. So what I started to do was I took the blame. I would just say, okay, maybe it was my fault. I would just keep saying, like, I'm not going to go in this blame game. Like, I made a mistake, or maybe it's something I wasn't clear about. I didn't say it. I didn't instruct you clearly enough. So I was just taking the blame. But then she told me that's bad because that makes you look weak. And you look like you're not capable as a leader, or you're not capable as a business person. You're always making these mistakes. So she says that was bad. Because that's how I adapted. I'm like, you know what? They're all being defensive, so I'll just be the guy that's like only, saying is maybe it was it was my mistake that you made that this happens because. But then she says that you're looking weak. So by you taking So it's like you can't win like one way or the other. Like I don't know. I just remember that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. I do think that, the culture, how these people brought up has a lot to do with it. And second, I feel like, let's just try to be more open-minded on this, right? And maybe these people don't fit your working style, right? Maybe you need to find people that have the same shared values with you, right? And just
Yeah.
like, part of the, on the topic of hiring, on identifying what's important to you, the people, what kind of attributes that they should have
Yeah.
to be on your team, right?
True.
Um,
True. True.
so
That's a good point. So usually before you start to hire people, a lot of times you find like we call it co-founder in the tech world and startup world, but I guess for today's audience, it's a little bit less tech, but maybe we call it business partners or the core team, which is even more critical than hiring. And I have in my show notes, I think we've, gone to a lot of, obviously so many startup events, there's even I've heard, I was even helping facilitate some startup weekends in China for some years. And there was even some negative feedback because they say, other people would say, oh, these startup events, these hackathons, oh yeah, let me just start up in a weekend. Let me just find a co-founder on a Friday night, raising my hand and picking the right person. And I'm going to, obviously the team is like we had kind of agreed on is one of the most important things, and finding the right people is something that takes a long time, right? Like any, any, any insights or tips, like how does someone find, like, of course there's your hometown friend, your college friend, there's, people you meet in the community. I don't know. I mean, it's so challenging. Like, do you have any insights or shortcuts or tips for this?
I don't think there's really a silver bullet, and it kind of works. Everyone has his own way, given the context and given the network. But I agree that you probably don't want to so-called marry someone they got on first date with, right? With all this startup weekend and hackathon. I think those are they serve their purpose, which is, I think, getting people together and think about actually building something. Maybe, to a lot of these people, they actually never built something that initiated by themselves instead of getting told by the boss, for example, right? So I think they have their purpose. I think it's also fun activity to do something. But if you're really talking about seriously, building a business, and it's something that I always say, you want to do this with people that you would go to the war with, right? You would trust that person, that, you will leave the baby with them, right?
Yeah.
So, and trust and respect takes time, right? It's not even just, oh, I look at your profile, you look great, oh, you have done this, and that, let's get together. Even though that person could be technically strong, in whatever aspect that is, you're still people, right? There's a relationship that you have to build and nurture. You have to build that respect, you have to build that trust. And those takes time. And how can you kind of do that? A lot of time is, like you said, childhood friends or people that you met for a while, even though we may not be able to working with them, but at least you hang out with them. You get to see them a different side, right? You get to see them a side that was not, I wouldn't say pretentious, but, like a work environment where they put on a different face, right? You get to see more overall. But of course, I think the best people that you can start something with is someone that you have worked with, right? Or someone that you work with them very closely. So personal referral, it matters a lot, right? At least you have another data point. You can kind of gauge that, oh, okay, well, hey, I like how Mike works. I know how Mike think about things, right? I know kind of what Mike values. And if Mike thinks that this person A is great, there's definitely some merit to it, right? Instead of just kind of random. Because if you think about it, if you're like really interviewing people, right? Of course they're at the best self, right? They're gonna try to tell you things. Again, this is interview skills, right? They try to tell you things that they think that you would want to hear, right? And it's your job as an interviewer to really get down to the why, really get down to, why certain things happened and what they did and all that. But yeah, it's like finding the real team, especially if you finding team if you haven't really done a lot, Or what's worse and what's more challenging is that you need to find someone that you never, type of person that you never work with, right?
Yeah.
You're not a tech person and now you need a tech person, right?
Yeah.
Or a tech person needs a salesperson, right? Then a lot of times, if you don't talk to enough of people, if you don't do enough research, you always, because you don't know, right? The gap of your knowledge or what's best compared to what's perceived by the person, it's, they're not aligned, right? And that is where some of the kind of bad hires, so called, right? Sometimes they are very capable. It just like doesn't work out, doesn't fit in this environment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, tip wise, I think the most important thing is really about doing your research.
Yeah.
Talking to people. I ask people. This is one thing that I always do when I need to hire a role that I never hired before. I go look at my network, find out all the people that have done the job or have hired those people, and just talk to them. Ask them what do you think? What should I look for? What is the view on a gray X over just a
Yeah.
good X, right? What's the view? And I think if you talk to enough people, then you start to see patterns, right?
Got it. Yeah, that's interesting because that's been on my list. Is like, how do you hire for a position you don't either know or you haven't hired for before? That's good. Talk to people that have done it in your network. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if you know my style or not, but I kind of like sometimes just share my mistakes here. So like, but the other issue is sometimes with co-founders is you want to work with sometimes your friends.
Mm.
But there's some issues with, there's positives. Of course, there's really good trust, but sometimes the negatives, they might be too similar to you. They might have the same skill set as you.
Mm.
And the worst is, there's obviously some friendships lost because of business, so there's some
Right.
risks. There is some risks,
Right.
to that.
Yeah. There's a saying that don't start this with your best friend
Yeah.
or your partner, right? Your spouse, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Never
And
know.
another idea I like, I can't say I've really done it. I can't think I've done it in a venture, but seeing somebody is doing something already that you want to do or you're doing, and almost like a merger of your two businesses becomes one. I think it
Mm.
might not be really a technical co-founder, but a lot of times, sometimes I've seen this where two different people doing. Actually, I've seen. I don't want to name names because but even in the startup community in Hong Kong, I've seen they've had their own startups, and then they realize another friend or somebody in the community is doing a similar startup, and I've seen I think 2 or 3 times it's happening. They merge and they become one startup. I've seen
Mm.
that, and it seems to have worked because then that's the best because they're executing already, right? They're
Mm.
doing it already in that. That's an ideal one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Well, M&A, merger and acquisition are very tricky. And even though like two things are running, if two things are very kind of equal, right? Then it's actually worse. I think if one side is doing a lot better and kind of absorb the other team, I think there's a bigger direction, right? There's a bigger momentum to go a certain way. But if it's like both are similar, what happened is I think there's probably going to be a lot more so-called conflicts, right? In
yeah,
terms of values, in terms of how they do things,
yeah, I kind of
and
wish I could. I wish I don't want to. Maybe after recording, I can tell you this example one, but they were both
right.
very early stage. They were very early stage, and they were both talking to me because it was in this space.
Oh, I see,
So
I see.
they were both talking to me, and I don't want to take too much credit, but they do credit me a lot for some insights I gave them.
Oh, great.
I don't think they. I met them both separately before they joined forces, and then they joined forces. And I'm not going to take the credit, but they do credit me for some of the amazing early stage feedback. And I don't know, I should be coming. I don't have any interest in their company, but I just remember they joined forces, but they were both pretty early stage. It was very early
Uh,
stage. So I guess it was so early that I don't know if there was too much.
okay.
And one was technical and one was business.
I see, I
So
see. Okay.
It got
Okay.
really lucky, and it's still working. I'm just shy to say the name. I don't know if I should do that. But well, let's move forward. So that was some insights on founders and partners, which is so tricky. You know, they say it's even more. They say it's even more intimate than a marriage. I don't know. I think marriage is still more intimate, but you know, it is at that level, right? You know, you're very, very, closely working and sharing your ups and your downs in your business. But hires is also very important, especially the first hires. What would you say? There's so many questions about the first hires. There's questions I can think of, like I guess it depends on the company and what they need, but the first kind of hires, like maybe just I'll leave it open ended for what you
Hmm.
say or think about this.
Right. Right. First few hires, I think I would say probably 10. Some people would say up to 20. These people really help define your culture. Um, and company culture. Culture seems very abstract, but I find a really good way to kind of crystallize it. And I heard this somewhere from my mentor is company culture is really about who you hire, who you promote, and who you fire. So
Hmm.
these people at the beginning, that they kind of set the tone basically, right? If they do well, and if you and your partner or kind of the general consensus promote certain behavior, right, that becomes culture, right?
Yeah.
That's how the culture get defined. If certain things that they don't do well or don't work with the rest of the team, that become you may have to let the person go, right?
Yeah.
By the way, firing is also very important, which I think a lot of people not doing it right. Not just
Yeah.
hiring, but firing, letting people go.
Yeah. Hire.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, nobody likes firing. I don't think. Well, maybe there are some, but most don't.
yeah, yeah. So I think, like I said, right, the culture is defined by these first 10 and 20 people that you bring on board. And the hiring process in general, I think, is also the first step that someone interact with your culture, right? So your process also optimize or kind of bias towards people that you like, right? And you kind of attract those people.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a loop, right? It's like the more you do, you kind of getting more and more. So, having diversity is important. I think for the first few hires, you get a different perspective of things. Um, Not when I say diversity, it doesn't necessarily mean just like gender, races, and that, but also like experience, right? How this like if every one of your team went to the same school, go to the same thing, work in the same company, and did very similar
Mm,
thing,
yeah.
that may not be very helpful, for example.
Yeah.
Another thing that I find first hires that you really want to look for, one of the important attributes is that they really willing to learn, and they treat themselves, they think of themselves, consider themselves as a generous, right? They don't mind getting their hands dirty. They don't mind learning, picking up new skills to get certain things done. They don't like, okay, well, I'm not gonna touch that, right? This is what I do, and this is all I want to do. I only want to get better at this, and I don't care about the other part of
Mm,
the system or the business, right? And those don't usually work well, especially in the early stage of business that so much changes are happening. You're
yeah.
gonna have to iterate and all that, and a lot of this up and down. So I think those attributes are really important for first few
Yeah.
hires.
Yeah. This is great, man. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, yeah, that's really good. I mean, I like all of that. I wonder. I guess there's so many ways because this Global Maze is more on the less on the tech startup, more on the general, trading, e-commerce kind of industries. So I don't. I guess in those there's not much equity pool, but ESOP, employee stock options. But I guess they should also want some vested interest. I mean, do you see that? I guess you see that in startups, right? But is that
Mm-hmm.
in they're almost like a partner in your company. I'm reading actually a book right now, Noah Kagan's How I Lost $170 Million. Have you ever heard of that? He
No.
was he was an early employee at Facebook, and he uh, he got laid off, and he lost his options. So he says he lost 170
Oh,
million.
oh
Yeah,
wow.
I'm still in the middle of the book, but I know the guy. He's a really amazing guy. So he started AppSumo. He started a few other ventures after. Um, but yeah, so he's talking about the early stages of Facebook where they had the party house, and they're like nobody was in
Mm,
before 11 a.m. They were up all night with pizza, beer, and coding, and like yeah, and move fast, break things kind of environment, which was cool. He says, which I would think is cool. But yeah, I can imagine the early stages of a company are very important. Um, I think you probably get asked this a lot too, and it's always so common. Like, what kind of contracts, agreements? I guess we gotta just say talk. And I know we gotta just say talk to a lawyer, but is there any kind of hacks or tips, for an early stage company, e-commerce or tech startup, especially in Asia, I feel like so complicated. You got Hong Kong companies, people in China, people in Southeast Asia, like of course the US, it's just I don't know if you have any. I can give some tips too, but I don't know if you have. How do you usually
I'd love
advise?
to hear your tips as well. But some of the more general ones, I would think that there are a lot of good templates out there probably. So you could probably find one that fits your need.
Yeah,
And I think the important thing about this is you definitely want to get the IP right in order.
yeah,
Um, so a lot of this, to be honest, is not very easily enforceable, but at least you kind of bring it up and, make sure that these people are aware of. And if you do take, outside funding, that's also something that's very important to the potential investors.
yeah,
Second part you mentioned about equity. This is also another cultural thing that I noticed is that let's say in the Bay Area where this equity thing are pretty common, right?
yeah,
People would be willing to take a risk and say, okay, I'll be okay getting compensated by the equity without, a lot of pay or way below market pay, right? But in Asia, that may not always be the case. They don't even value your equity. Like,
yes,
I don't want
true.
your equity. Don't give it to me. Just,
Yes,
give me
true.
more cash, right?
Yeah,
So that's get tricky. But if you do find people that like and or value your equity, right, then you definitely want to have the proper equity agreement in place. And one of the biggest terms that you definitely should have on there is called vesting schedule.
yeah,
So you basically kind of earn your share, right? Say I allocate X amount, but you kind of have to earn it every month, right? And there's always this clipping. There's a 1 year clip. It's kind of like a probation type of thing, but it's really, to protect the company. If within a year we find out it's not working or for whatever reason, you're not taking any part of the equity because you haven't really invested enough in the company or
yeah.
contribute enough in the company to make a difference.
Agreed.
So those two, I think are the biggest thing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I
at least
totally
from
agree.
my point. And I think these two are things that are a lot harder to fix afterwards. I think there are things like your tax, your worker, and maybe insurance and all that. Worst case you pay extra for the fine or whatever. But those are things that you can easily fix. But if you don't have an IP raise and someone left, and you getting talked about acquisition or whatever or investment, if you don't have those, it gets things a little bit tricky. Especially also vesting schedule too.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, I agree, and I can link in the show notes. I have. I hate to say, it's so hard with legal, but I don't know where I even got one, but I have a blog post with the MOU. So I call them.
Mm.
I learned about MOUs so long ago, man. Like somebody sent one to me a long time ago, and then I looked it up. And I'm like, what does this mean? And it basically says it's a paper that says two people or two party or well, those parties listed on the agreement are agreeing to these terms. So it's a very general agreement that's like I've learned, and what I got into one of those first. Man, I have so many. We all have so many stories, but I went to Europe. I got a for a we're doing like a SEO tool in China, and he flew us out there in 2009 with the MOU, and then he says, well, once we get it serious enough, then we can have the lawyers and make the shareholder agreements and make all these more formal contracts. So I've been kind of relying on these MOUs for a lot of my ventures, and it basically, it has the IP rights in there saying like anything that's contributed during this time while you're a part of this is owned by this company or this entity,
Right.
and then usually if it has any kind of equity in it, it has a cliff and a vest schedule, like with an basically I just copy paste a spreadsheet, from the dates, so that because I think the agreements, just like anything, it makes honestly it's helped me keep my friendships, because I have friends that I work with like we all do, and then sometimes life changes. They either don't like to do it anymore, or they found something else that they want to do more. You know what I mean? And by having this simple agreement, at least there's a rule. At least there's something that's signed that has something that's a rule book. So at least it's clear on both sides that this is what's supposed to happen if this person no longer is able or willing to contribute anymore. And then that. But of course, it's tough to maybe enforce these, but I still think it helps to have these. So I'll link to a simple MOU, and then, but yeah, I think there's even more and more of these like internet lawyer companies where you get agreements. But I think like you said, the most important is IP, and then the second is definitely don't give away all the equity on day one to, and people sometimes contest that with me, and I say, well, if I leave, I don't get it either. You know what I mean? Like everybody, if I, so it's on both sides, so, but that really protects, because especially a tech company or early stage startup, if one of the founders leaves, it's like really gonna hit the company hard. Usually, even with big multinational public companies, when like a high level executive leaves, the stock on even a public stock goes down, usually a little bit at least, so, I mean, people need to realize that. Well, this has been really fascinating, Thomas, and thanks again, really, for sharing these. I think these are the kind of talks that people, finding the right team and dealing with it, and we can go on forever, honestly. But is there any last parts you want to kind of like share or tips? I guess just before we wrap up.
We didn't really get to talk about this, but I think one thing about team building, the two things I think important. Actually, one I could make it one. Hire slow, fire fast. So take your time to find the right person. Don't fall into this like, oh, I need to get this done, I'm gonna just bring this A, B, C and people on. It's gonna take you a lot more effort, a lot more hassle to let someone go. And it's not just about that, action, but it's also, it hurts the team morale. It's like you said, right? Kind of, I wouldn't say show your weak side, but it's like it doesn't instill confidence to the team sometimes. If you do that a lot, and they would think that, oh, well, do you value me? Are you gonna just let me go like that?
Exactly.
All that. So, but if you do see someone that is not pulling the weight or just not working out with the team, right? Sometimes, again, they can be great talents. I always think that everyone has his own talent, right? And other times things don't work out. It's not just about the team member, right? It could be the environment or the culture that these people really perform within. So if you do identify someone that doesn't work, there's another process. Kind of think about how to let someone go properly, professionally. But you should do that fast, right? Once you identify that.
Agreed. No, that's definitely that's a good one to also wrap up the main topics today. And also having an employee handbook. Obviously this discussion, this is like a whole course, a whole HR there's just never ending. But by having policies in place, so that way there's no questions, or at least less questions about everything. But yeah, I made like a checklist for that too in the team, for onboarding and offboarding. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it does, it's for sure. But honestly, the other point of that is I've had people on the team thank me when I fire somebody. They're like,
Yes.
finally, they're like,
Yes.
finally,
Yes.
you did that.
Yeah. A lot of kind of business owner partner, they always worry about letting someone go, but what they didn't realize is that a lot of other team may want you to do it, or maybe even that person wants you to stay at first, right?
Yeah, yeah, they won't. A
Right.
lot. I'll stop picking on the Asia introvert, but especially employee, they don't feel like it's their right to tell you this person is doing bad or this person should go. I mean, it is a kind of a big, bold thing to say anyway. But I've had people thank me after more than once,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yep.
and
I
it
agree
does
with you.
define the culture for sure. Because then the others will see, oh, this person was, not performing, and this is what, like you said, I like how, yeah, I learned a lot today. So, yeah, really thank you, Thomas. Is there what would you like us to, link on the show notes, or have people find, blogs or social or anything, websites for us to find more?
Yeah, I sent to you. I'm on Twitter. That's most active. Thomas
Okay,
Pun. And
great.
your audience, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Happy to help.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Do you enjoy the show? Do you enjoy how we keep up all this content? I wish I could say I did this all myself. We have amazing team members, management, tools, systems, processes, man. Just a handbook alone. We've spent so many years making out all these processes, and we've been helping other people with their podcasts. Actually, we're just signing on somebody else to do their podcast, and we do tons of blogs. We do some videos, and others with our amazing team here at contentinvestments.com is a little mini site we put together for that. You can check it out, see different packages. If you want to work with us and our amazing team, check it out, and it supports the show. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Thomas. I mean, really, like I said in the intro, I get to, get really amazing input. I guess it's one of the benefits for grinding out these interviews. 320 shows now, plus E-commerce Gladiator, plus some other podcasts I've done over the years. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thomas, really thank you for sharing. And check out what he's doing. It's really amazing stuff. And, he's really good at dealing with people. And I learned... And like I said in the intro, if you made it to this blah, blah, blah session in today's talk right now, I will share, I never said I was doing it right, but in the interview, you might have heard me talking about, being maybe too direct, or I used to, I got called shadow on Wall Street. I was called quiet and fast, and then I go into Asia and I try to manage like some sourcing e-commerce operations in Shenzhen in 2007 and 8 when I, after being beat up on Wall Street. Yeah, I thought I was pretty, easy going, but in Asia I was scary and direct. Maybe it's just also I'm a foreigner, and language and culture barriers, but it was a struggle many years. Still is. I have a cross-border marriage. My wife, I have to still, I guess maybe any marriage is tricky, but I don't know how to say it, but I don't know if it's right or wrong, but like I said in the interview, I kind of gotten much more passive, and I'm not as direct and not as aggressive. I don't think I ever was really aggressive, but now I really try to be so indirect and talking around topics, which maybe doesn't fit this book or Western management. But I do think, Asia business, China business is a bit different from the West. But it was true, like I said in the interview, like then my assistant Jojo told me I'm being too weak now because I would never like say somebody else made a mistake. I would always kind of say, oh, maybe I wasn't clear enough. Maybe it wasn't, so it was always never that person's fault. So it kind of backfired on me. But reading this book, Radical Candor, it's kind of hard to remember, Radical Candor. I got it off Amazon and I've been reading it. It's actually the interviews. It was only a week ago, so I couldn't get through this big book in the week before the show came online. But I did get through a chunk of it, and I watched the YouTube video he talked about, and I read a blog post about it. The idea is, and I'm still going to finish it, but the idea so far is not being an a-hole, but not being like so passive, aggressive, or indirect. I don't know if I really did that. But they said to basically give guidance and feedback to your team so that they know if they're making a mistake or not, and they like that rather than it being indirect. And it's also when you fire somebody and they didn't even know they were making mistakes, and then suddenly they get fired, they get angry. That's really so far what I've gotten out of the book. And there's 4 quadrants. Basically, the idea is you can be an a-hole, which, some people say like big, successful CEOs are a-holes because they just directly say what they want. They don't care if they hurt your feelings. And I've actually blogged about this on my personal blog a long time ago, but, that's the a-hole quadrant. Radical candor is what they say is ideal. It's being direct, but actually caring about the person, not just saying you're wrong, this is wrong, not being, but actually thinking about how the other person is going to feel with this feedback, but still giving them the feedback, not holding back on the feedback. And then the other quadrant is you're not really giving them the feedback because you don't want to hurt their feelings, but then it kind of hurts the whole company because everybody starts being not doing good and feels like you're not caring. And that's the other quadrant. I hope I'm right. Of course, read the book yourself. And then there was the other one, which is kind of like passive aggressive, where you fake act like you care, but you don't really care, and you're just kind of manipulating people. So I think those are the 4 different quadrants. And they say it's very common for the one, maybe Thomas's meeting I was doing in the China office, is you're not really being direct to them. You're kind of trying to be nice to them, so you don't give them this feedback because you don't want to hurt their feelings. I think that's what he was maybe saying and how it fits in this book. Maybe that's true in Asia. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter where in the world. Even in the book, they're saying this works in China. They talked about it in some tech company in Beijing that had used this, and some executive used this really successfully. But I do agree. Like when you tell somebody they're doing something wrong, but you care about the person, and you balance caring and being a good manager, but also giving good feedback, is what I've learned from this book. And still not done with it. And they even say, look, I tape it on the wall. I mean, they do talk a lot about this being in-person office, though. That's one thing. So far, the book seems like everybody's in the same office, and there's like meetings and, water cooler talk. So we're all online. So it is a little bit different. But yeah, I think it's true. You got to give feedback to your team. You can't, hold back on the feedback to not hurt their feelings or not to make you feel like you're bad. You have to, if you care about someone. Actually, I just finished teaching my kids. I'm still teaching my kids in the afternoons. And if you just don't give them feedback about how to improve, they're not going to improve, right? How can somebody improve if they don't know where to improve or that they're not doing well? So that's basically what I got. And this is a blah, blah, blah session. So I don't know. I hope you helped. And Thomas, thank you again for sharing. Definitely check out the show notes. We have his photo and some other links at globalfromasia.com/people-management, because it's all about people, right? Thanks again for listening, and I hope this helps you with your perspective of dealing with people, because whether you're an Amazon seller or whether you're, running a startup or whether you're, traditional business, you're dealing with people. I mean, even if it's freelancers, even if it's not what you would think are, dealing with people. You're dealing with people all the time. I mean, I kind of like talking to this microphone. I maybe don't like to deal with people so much, honestly, but we do no matter what. And the better you are at it, the better your business will be. Thank you again. And see you next week. We got some great interviews lined up already. Thank you.
To get more info about running an international business, please visit our website at www.globalfromasia.com. That's www.globalfromasia.com. Also, be sure to subscribe to our iTunes feed. Thanks for tuning in.